So anyway, apologies in advance that this is not going to be as good as your podcast, but
Shut
also
up.
this show is not as good as Succession, so it doesn't need
This
to be.
is the thing. It can't, it's
Can't
such
be.
a different thing. I was thinking that it's like, I mean, I don't know what your feeling is, but we don't allow any criticism of Succession really. And I feel like with this, there has to be room for positives and negatives.
I mean, it's so difficult because we don't want to be slagging off people's favorite show and stuff like that, but also the first 2 episodes. Did you watch both of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought, so it wasn't the second film. Like, it wasn't terrible. And I basically, sorry, my phone is making too much noise.
I think they've tried to make, anyway, I should do the opening titles because I think we're going to step on things.
Yeah, let's not get into it okay.
The Spontaneity Shop presents The Guilty Feminist Watchers and Just Like That. The Sex and the City Reheal. With me, Deborah Frances-White, and my special guest, Sara Barron. Episode 1, Hello, It's Me, and Episode 2, A Little Black Dress. So, Sara Barron, you are a brilliant comedian. You have the funniest bones in show business, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Also, you do what is categorically and objectively the best rewatch. It's not a rewatch, is it? What you don't say rewatch because that's when you watch
I
an
think
old
we're
show.
not allowed to call it a companion podcast because it's not official, but it is essentially
Unofficial
a
companion podcast.
Succession companion pod.
Okay. You do what is absolutely categorically, in my opinion, and objectively in everyone's opinion, a companion podcast. It's like a TV podcast for the show Succession. It's an unofficial podcast, but that's in a way what makes it so incredible. If it were official, it wouldn't be so brilliant, I don't think. Can I just can I fangirl about your podcast for 2 seconds?
Oh my God, I'm not going to stop you.
So it's you and your husband, real life husband, just to be clear.
Yeah,
who's
not my imaginary one.
well, there are fictional marriages in
Yes,
Succession.
of course. So this is a real marriage.
This is not fictitious, your marriage.
No.
You and your husband, who's a presenter and producer, obsessed with Succession and the relations in it. But also, I learn a lot about your marriage and your dynamic through it, which is another meta level. And it's called brilliantly Firecrotch and Normcore,
Yes.
which is an insult thrown to Shiv and Tom, 2 of the central characters of Succession, by Shiv's brother. It's just an absolute delight. So you were the person that I wanted most and first on this podcast because your analysis is second to none. You get gritty and you're always funny. And I couldn't ask for anything better for our
Deborah,
first
thank you.
recap sitch.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I mean, when you said you were doing this podcast, I was like, yeah, this is the thing with these big shows. What I was feeling in the run up to Succession, and I am now feeling about, and just like that, is we need a place to put our feelings. Like, these are shows, whether they're brilliant or we obsess on these shows, and we need a place for our feelings after having experienced them.
We do, because I see people all the time on Twitter going, did anyone see such and such last night? Because I have to talk about it.
Right.
Is anyone willing to just talk about I've literally FaceTime people I haven't seen in years who've said, I just need to get something off my chest about last night's episode of whatever.
Right.
Now, this show is anticipated, highly anticipated. This is a show that started in the 90s. I feel I grew up with these women.
And can I ask you, were you watching it? Like, did you watch it in real time starting in 98, or did you find it in 2002 or 2003 and get obsessed? What's your relation to SATC?
See, I think I was at university from 97 to 2000, and I don't remember watching it at university. So I think the first time I remember watching it, I was living in a flat in London. So I think I did some kind of catch up in those days. Children, if you're listening, there weren't really there were no streaming options. If you missed a show, you missed a show. We used to record it off the TV, but I think they did used to do marathons on different channels, on cable channels. So I suspect I caught up with Sex and the City on some kind of marathon situation. And a marathon, children, is a broadcast binge watch.
Yes, teach the children, Deborah.
That's right. So I think I was an early noughties adopter.
Yes.
But by the time, the last episode was on, we had a party and we all, wore fancy shoes. I mean, we weren't wearing Manolo Blahniks, let's be incredibly clear. We had no budget for those. But whatever the knockoff versions of those were, we had Cosmopolitans and, had all my friends over. So I was very into it by the end. What is your history with Sex and the City, please?
So my history with Sex and the City is, I think, sort of very similar to you. By the time it was getting toward its end in 2004, and do you remember the episode where it's Carrie's 35th birthday party and no one shows up?
Yes.
And there's a girl at the table next to her who goes, "Guys, I'm 25. I'm 20 fucking 5." So I think at that time I myself was
old.
Yeah, I'm so fucking old. And I think I was 25 then, and it made me feel so young. And now, of course, I'm watching And Just Like That, and I'm 42, and where has the time gone? So I got into it. I watched the last season in real time, then went back and was just fully obsessed with it from 2004 to 2008. And know every episode backwards and forwards, and know both films backwards and forwards. And then rewatched it again when my son was born 5 years ago, because I would just have to sit and nurse all day, and I would remember my younger self.
Remember a life outside breastfeeding.
Remember a life outside breastfeeding, and a life that felt sort of sexy and sexual and all that. It's one of the two shows that I have memorized. It's Sex and the City and 30 Rock. Those are my two.
Yeah.
That I know better than anything.
I have a similar relationship with Friends as a comfort watch.
Yes.
If I'm trying to fall asleep or something, or sorry, Friends, I don't mean you're the cure for insomnia, but you know what I mean? It's just sometimes you need a comfort.
Yeah, your
place.
little friends get in bed with you non-sexually, and they just kind of hold your hand as you drift off. And that, to me, yes, is Sex and the City and 30 Rock, just those two.
Listen, we know also, again, young people, we know that these shows, in hindsight, are very problematic in places.
Yes.
But also, can I just speak on behalf of Sex and the City and say, you weren't there in the 90s. You don't know how bleak it was for women and how much women were shamed for their sexuality. And we were sort of meant to be slightly playing defense, I don't really want that. But, there were all sorts of ways in which women were shamed. We do not have time to go into the 90s per se and what bleakness was around. And the great thing about Sex and the City, and it really was innovative, and it really was influential, it gave women this ownership over their sexuality, that it was not a shameful thing, that it was something to be celebrated over brunch in public, in daylight. And it allowed us to have conversations that we had never had before and that were not socially acceptable before. And can I just say, by the way, my mum's generation, although very few of that generation probably watched it, by osmosis, this is a tipping point thing, but the right people, in inverted commas, watched Sex and the City,
right,
who influenced other people in society. So it became far more acceptable for every woman of every generation, whether they'd seen the show or not, to talk, in the world that I know, to talk about sex at lunch or to admit to having a vibrator. It had a broad influence. And so if you are a young person thinking, but, it's problematic in these following ways, sure. But also, if you're saying don't sex shame me, don't slut shame me, you have to acknowledge its place in the cultural canon.
Yeah, and it's so interesting as well. I have this bit of stand-up where I talk about how many men I've had sex with, which I'm really open about. And I'll sort of say, I wish it was double that. The idea of women wanting to keep their number down is insane to me. And when I do this bit, I make the audience guess how many people I've had sex with. So I've been all right, guys, give me a number. And inevitably someone will say 27. And I'll go, okay, higher, lower. And then someone will say 30. And I'll tell you right now, it's higher than 30. And I'll ask everyone to pause. And everyone thinks the joke is, come on, guys, don't suggest I've fucked 30 guys. Whereas in fact, I fucked like well over 50. And the point is that even now, like this woman who's in a really alpha position, meaning she's on stage doing stand up, that there's some presumption that she's like, stop it. I wouldn't have fucked 30.
No
It's
more than
still
6,
pervasive.
but 4 of those were my husband.
Exactly. And that's still sort of there. And it does go to show how revolutionary it was and how much, even when we talk now about slut shaming and this, it's still sort of in the culture. And these, this is the thing, right? 2 things can be true. It can be a deeply problematic show and a revolution all at the same time.
I mean, the thing is, everything now will be problematic in 20 years' time. Like,
right, exactly.
So that's the nature of progress. We either want progress. Every time you ask for progress, you ask for now to be problematic. That is what I would say.
Yes. Yes.
And listen, if you're listening in from the Sex and the City writer's room and you're thinking, we need more lines like that, hit up my agent. I'm with Casarotto. So how excited were you, given you were 25 so we were 10 years younger than Carrie, and so you looked up to Carrie and the gang presumably as, all these sophisticated, glamorous, sex-positive women with the right shoes out in these fabulous bars. And it was always sort of that kind of fantasy. How excited were you for this new show?
It's interesting. So I will say this thing, which this is your line. So take this is something that you said to me when we weren't recording. So I just want to acknowledge, like, I love Sex in the City like I love my family. So because it's my family, I'm allowed to dog on it a little bit, the way that you can talk shit about your mom, but no one else can talk shit about your mom.
That's exactly what I said to you before the show. It's okay, because if you were worried about your sister at Christmas,
yes, because
you feel like she's taken a wrong turn, you tell her. Whereas your brother's girlfriend, you don't know that well.
You can't say shit. You don't fucking know her.
You just keep walking.
Keep that trap shut. But we are family.
Family. And these women are our sisters. Yes. Our problematic sisters.
So I felt that I was, as everyone was, the second film, which was the last thing we had, which was over 10 years ago, that to me set sort of a low standard. And I was very worried about the lack of Samantha. So I was like excited, but not insanely excited, right? So knowing that we were recording today, I made this real point of watching last night, but I wasn't at a level of excitement that was so extreme that had that not been the case, I might not have saved it till the weekend or something. Do you know what I mean? So, and I hate this. I fucking hate this about myself. But if the Guilty Feminist Presents is not the right place to put these feelings, then I don't know where is. Like, I'm having a very hard time. And I thought this with the Friends reunion. And I thought it with this. Cut this if you think it's going to get us in trouble or whatever. But like the plastic surgery on some of the faces is affecting my ability to enjoy myself. Did you have?
Okay, so here's the thing that I feel about that. And absolutely, this is absolutely a perfect place to talk about this, because I think it is a feminist issue in every direction, because we have all these feelings about why can't women do whatever they want to their faces. Right. It's their face. But then in another way, we feel like our iconic women encouraging younger women to do things to their faces because the patriarchy demands youth. Like it's so complicated and it's so troubling to us that I think we do need to have this conversation. Do you know why I found it less troubling with Sex and the City than I did at the Friends reunion? At the Friends reunion, I felt like I was watching, for some of the Friends cast, and I totally understand why they do it, because they're pickled in aspic. They're young forever for us. So when people see them, they're like, oh, I remember Matt LeBlanc saying some story about some kid saying, are you Joey's dad? You know, like it's difficult, I imagine, if you are iconically young to age publicly. So this is no judgment on anybody. Who knows how any of us would respond in that situation. But I felt some of them looked like their own spitting image puppets. You know, like it was scary to me. because I was like, no, like I love seeing Matt LeBlanc look older. Aging is great for others, not for me. But do you know why I didn't mind it so much with the Sex and the City gang? I think those women in Manhattan, the characters, would keep up with the latest technologies around.
I think that's right.
Collagen stimulation. And I don't think I heard Sarah Jessica Parker say, I've heard so much criticism that I don't have enough wrinkles or I have too many wrinkles. And can my face just be my face? And can people stop talking about wrinkles? It's none of your business. And I was like, she was talking about it for all of them, I think.
Yes.
She was like, some people say I look too old. Some people say I don't look old enough. Some people say I've had too much done. And some people say, why have you aged in any way, shape or form? You are my youthful icon. How dare you age? So in that spirit,
sort of want to not discuss.
Not discuss it, but just more like I want to put those things on the table. One is Manhattan women like that would have Botox.
Well, but this is what I found so interesting is I thought like Miranda looked great and she looked old. She looked not old, but you know what I mean? It was like, but there was something, it was, what upsets me about it in a very personal and disgusting and vain way is that I like to imagine that by the time I am 55, somewhere or another, I'll be rolling in dough. Whatever I want to do to my face, I'm going to be able to do it. And I'm going to find the best doctor and I will do this and I won't feel guilt and blah, blah, blah. And I just sometimes think there's just not a perfect way to age. And I want to imagine that we can all be Helen Mirren. And the thing is that like Helen Mirren and Cate Blanchett and J-Lo, they're like the three.
Gillian Anderson.
Gillian Anderson, yes. But it just...
Yeah, it's depressing to think even with a Friends budget... Where they like make $1 million a year just for reruns.
You got the genes or you don't got the genes, and that's all there is.
Yeah, with the Friends budget, you can't not look altered in some way, shape, or form. That's the thing.
I felt uncomfortable, and I hated that I felt uncomfortable with the faces because I feel like mid-50s is a really unexamined age. When do we ever get to see TV that is sort of centering women at that age? So I'm like excited for it and I want to see it done in kind of a sexy and sexual and glamorous way.
I see yeah.
And then there was something about the kind of plastic surgery that I was looking at that made it feel less aspirational or something. I don't know. And in a way, my favorite scene, I think, or one of my favorite scenes was when Carrie, like in episode 1, when Carrie is like, do you masturbate? And they kind of get into that and he starts touching himself. And it felt like really real and interesting. And I wanted to see sex stuff with people that age.
I took a note of how far that was in because that, for me, that scene was where the show became Sex and the City, the reheal for me.
Yes,
it's like
exactly
it became like,
that.
This is what it can be.
I thought sort of in that first episode, there were those great lines, I thought, in the very first scene where Miranda is talking about her son's condoms. And it felt snappy and funny and filthy and like I'm stepping on my son's semen. I thought, yes.
Yeah.
And then that masturbation scene. And I really, I felt...
There were moments of promise. That's what I thought.
Yes,
like,
I think that's a very good way of putting it.
I can
moments
see
of
what
promise.
this can be. So quick précis for episode 1. And if you have not watched it yet, but you're thinking, it doesn't really matter. Like, I'm just going to listen to these guys, then I'll watch it later. Please be aware there's a massive spoiler at the end of episode 1. So if you like drama and surprises, stop listening now, pause, go watch it, come back to us. So episode 1, we find Carrie and the girls, Son, Samantha, and I cannot wait to talk to you about the meta explanation for where Samantha is. Oh my God. Are having brunch as per, and as we follow Carrie through the episode, we see that she's still very much in love with Big. She's reinvented herself as a podcaster, but she's finding it difficult to mix in with the millennials because they want to talk about sex in such a graphic way. And her way was generally in her column more kind of witty and subtle, I suppose. Maybe it wasn't subtle then, but it seems subtle now in retrospect is the storyline. And they're encouraging her to be more vulgar, I suppose, or more like blatant or, less, don't sex shame me, that kind of feel.
Right.
And Miranda has gone back to college because she's decided she wants to become a human rights lawyer and not a corporate lawyer. I have feelings on that. Charlotte is really mumsy and obsessed with her daughter's piano recital. Her daughter's a very talented pianist and leans quite heavily on Carrie to come to the recital. The upshot of all of this is Carrie does come to the recital and we cut quite Godfather style between the piano recital and what I thought was like a big old product placement for Peloton. It was big.
I sort of just took it as an acknowledgement of like, these are like everyone who is wealthy has a Peloton now. It's just the given.
Felt to be like super heavy product placement, like really going on about, I felt like an infomercial for Peloton and they were cutting between
Ride
Peloton.
this and you'll
I'm obsessed
die.
with Peloton. I love Peloton. But cutting between Peloton and the piano recital. And Tom was like, this is a strange cut. And I said, like back and forth. I said, I can't see why they would be cutting back to him on Peloton. Like, it's a bit infomercially.
Oh, so you didn't know what the big twist was going to be?
No, I didn't know. And then I said, unless he's going to have a heart attack. And then he does have a heart attack. And when Carrie comes home from the recital, she finds him lying on the shower floor. His phone's got wet, so he hasn't been able to call anyone. Weirdly, they kind of look into each other's eyes and have a sort of last kiss of life. But she doesn't ring the ambulance, which is a strange move.
Yes.
She just lets him die in her arms. But it's very romantic. It's more romantic than watching her dial 911. And then the last line is, and just like that, Big died. And I was like, oh my God.
And you didn't, because I had heard something months ago. I think my husband
I'd heard
said,
so many different rumors. I think maybe at one point someone suggested it, but I thought it was what was going to happen in one of the movies that never came about or something in the next movie that came out. I didn't.
I wish I could have been fully shocked by it. But the second he got on that Peloton bike, I was like, okay, all right, here we go.
I did not think Peloton would allow it because I thought it was clearly product placement. I was like, I still am struggling. I'm going to talk to someone I know who works at Peloton because I'm still struggling to know why they did because it looked a bit like Peloton's going to give you a heart attack if you're a certain age.
And if you're over the age of 55,
really surprised.
It's gonna kill you.
They did do a bit of clarification on it of going, well, it definitely wasn't the bike in episode 2. No. He was cleared by, it's just one of those things. And I was like, it's in my mind. Anyway, I'm much more likely to have a heart attack if I don't use the Peloton. Let's be completely honest. Keep your heart moving, people.
So in the second episode, then, we begin in the aftermath of this death. And, you know, what is made very clear and what I found very moving was that the friends sort of are there to support her, that sort of everyone's on this rotating schedule to make sure that Carrie is not alone. We see her selecting the appropriate funeral home, finding the proper funeral service. Most of that second episode is then focused on the funeral service for Big. We get quite a big sense that Charlotte's emotional response to Big's death is exhausting to Carrie. And part of the reason she's having such an emotional response is she feels that if she sort of hadn't forced Carrie to come to the recital, Carrie might have been there when the heart attack happened, or she would have been there. And maybe she could have made a call earlier and maybe he would have survived. We see the delivery of the ashes to the home. And we see that Carrie is sort of starting to need to keep Charlotte at a distance because, as can happen, and we see a lot of this at the funeral and with Charlotte, when you yourself suffer a loss, people trying to be there for you make it about them. And they don't mean to, but they say things like, oh, well, when I went through it, oh, well, for me. And then you just, while you're in your own grief, you're having to sort of like support other people through the triggers that have arisen for them. And so in the final scene, we see Carrie with her 3 friends at her house. She has Miranda there. She has Stanford there. She has Charlotte there, but ultimately she is still just alone with her husband's ashes. And it's so real, isn't it? So like if Carrie's 55, Big would have supposedly been like 65 or 66, which, Jesus Christ, that is way too young to go.
That's no age anymore.
But it's also like, that just had like, I know so many women whose husbands just...
That's a lot of life left.
But
if you're 55, that's a lot of life left.
Yes, but it also isn't,
she could live to 100.
My God. Yes, but it also isn't dead at 41. Do you know what I mean? Like it's
No. Well, really, I feel like maybe Chris Noth said, look, I'll come back, jerk off and die. That's all I'm prepared to do, which is what he did.
Which is what he did.
Yeah, he jerked off, he died. Those were his two big scenes. And presumably he said, I'll come back and do that. And then what that means is we know that Carrie had the love of her life. What's dating in your 50s after the love of your life dies like? Can I say one of my, and again, we say this with love because Sex and the City is family.
It's family.
And we care. And so we can't talk about this without, we've all got massive expectations for what this could have been or how we would have wanted it. So that's what we're going in with, our hypothetical other shows we could have had. I have to say, I'm surprised that she was much more devastated when he stood her up at the altar than she was when he died. Because in the film, the first film, she went to bed for days. There was one of those brave scenes in inverted commas, which is how women are described when they don't have makeup on.
Yeah.
We saw her like just staring out the window, catatonic with grief when he stood up at the altar. When he died, she was like, well, I've got to get my outfit together for the funeral. Can Charlotte stop crying so much? Like,
please,
I've got to pick out a funeral home and I need it to be very classy and tasteful. And then it's like, oh God, like I want Stanford here cracking jokes about the neighbor rather than Charlotte here weeping and making me feel like I've got to reassure her that it's not her fault. Did you compare those two grief-stricken experiences?
That's really interesting. And I didn't think to do that, but I do feel that there is something sort of real and human in, I thought she was very, hold on, I've got so many thoughts on this and I'm not expressing them articulately. So here's what I want to say. I've always felt that Sarah Jessica Parker as an actress, and I think she's great, but I always felt that in the series, she was challenged by the more emotional moments. I felt that there was a way that Cynthia Nixon or Kristen Stewart had of sort of being able to cry for camera that Sarah Jessica Parker never did. And so when it's like, oh, she and Aiden are finally breaking up, I'd be like, oh shit, this isn't where she excels. Oh, here we go. And really, as she has matured as an actress, what she has given, and I'm getting chills as I think about it now, I thought she performed the shit out of every bit of grief that these films, that the first film and in Just Like That have asked of her. And I thought the performance of a woman who is just, it's almost like she's more depressed, so she can't even afford the catatonic state. Like I've seen that in people where it's like, a really, really bad professional thing happens and they're catatonic for days, but then their mother dies and the grief manifests in a way that's like, I guess I have to get on with this. And then 6 months later is when they can't move out of bed.
You're so right. Yeah.
So I thought there was like a real humanity in how she played it. And, the gift of what people say about like that kind of grief is that there's like a gift in having a funeral and being a little too busy. And then when it gets you is 6 months down the line where this is just your life now and this person is gone and you're in your bed alone every night, waking up each morning without them there. And I was really impressed with her acting.
Do you think they're going to cut to like a year later or something? Because
that's smart. They might.
I hope they do, because I'll tell you what, it's not that I don't want to see a show about a 55-year-old woman grieving, but it's not why I tune into Sex and the City. When I tune into Sex and the City, I'm looking for frocks. I'm looking for cosmopolitans, fun nights out, sex talk. I want to see Carrie Bradshaw on a dating app, which we never got to see.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see her get a dick pic, or how does she respond to? I don't really want to see her get a dick pic, but you know what I mean? I want to see her dealing with the modernity of dating. So I'm excited for all of that. I don't really want to see her grieving for a year because it's not why I tune into this show. I would love to see that on another show, but it's not why I tune into this show. Do you see what I mean?
I hope you're right. And I wonder if that is where we get to at episode 3 or 4. Are they just do we know yet how many seasons we're going to get of
No.
And Just Like That? We don't know.
It could be just one. It could just,
And so
it depends
it's
how
gonna be
many
like-
people watch it.
Everyone's going to watch it. Come on.
Yeah,
because
but
I have to say, I had mixed feelings about it. I wasn't like, oh my God. But I was like, all right, I'm in. Yeah, I'm going to watch this whole thing 4 times. I can tell you that's already happening. So on that level, it was a success, even though I thought, oh God, doing this without Samantha is, part of the reason that show was brilliant was because of that chemistry and the 4 perspectives and just Samantha gone is huge.
Yeah.
And I loved everyone they introduced me to, but it's
you
not.
don't see another Samantha yet. And I understand why they didn't replicate a Samantha. They didn't have a Samantha.
Yeah, and I think that was smart to not try to fill her shoes, but still they didn't fill those shoes. Did you notice, are you a Hamilton fan?
I am a Hamilton fan.
So the actor who originated the role of Washington on Broadway and who was in it in the Disney Plus special plays, I'm forgetting her name, but the woman who's the new mum friend of Charlotte, whose son is bad at the recital. She's like gorgeous.
Lisa Todd Wixley is the character name. The actress's name is Nicole Ari Parker.
Yes.
And she is... I took a note, the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in real life.
God.
And the man who plays her husband in the show was the original Washington in Hamilton. And you think she might be a candidate for another one of their friends?
It seems like her and Miranda's teacher and the podcast host
are all
going to be doing
candidates
some
for-
heavy lifting. And I was into all 3 of them, but Samantha's still gone.
Samantha is still gone. Now, can we please talk about what they did to deal with Samantha? Because this was the big question of what they were going to do. I found it so incredibly fucking meta. The opening was so strange. It was like they bumped into Bitsy Van Muffling, who's one of the favorite Outer Circle characters of all time. And she said, "Where's Samantha?" And Charlotte says, "She's no longer with us," implying she's died, which is not what you'd say if your friend had moved to London.
Right.
But it's a sort of playing tricks with the audience. And then I'd heard this rumor that they were just going to say they'd just grown apart. She's moved away, she's on a different time zone, fine. But then Carrie and Miranda talk about it, and she goes, well, when I wasn't, didn't want her as a publicist anymore, she didn't want to be my friend anymore. And I just feel really hurt that she used me as an ATM machine. So in other words, she was only my friend for pay. How do you think that parallels with what she's really sending a message to Kim Cattrall about?
Oh, interesting. So I don't think I think it got like quite a lot of flack for that. And Jeff was watching that part of it with me. And so Jeff and I'll do a thing if we're watching something on TV and we'll go, exposition, and like there's this really blatant bit of exposition. But I just thought we need it. I would much prefer this sort of bizarre, clunky bit of exposition where at least we go, that's the story. And I thought it was
I thought it was a dig at Kim Cattrall.
See, that's interesting.
You were my friend when I was paying you a lot of money.
No, Deborah, I disagree on this because they've never been friends, SJP and Kim Cattrall. I think Kim Cattrall has always been a real odd man out in that cast. I think always. No?
But in the big celeb feud, when she was on a chat show, she said, I was heartbroken when Kim Cattrall said, we've never been friends. How can we never have been friends? We've worked together on this special show for years. Of course we were friends. I was heartbroken to hear her say that we were only ever work colleagues.
Oh, interesting.
So I think it's a dig. I think it's like, oh, well, you were only my friend for pay. you broke the friendship. You moved away. I would love her to reach out. I've reached out to her. And the big public feud is when Kim Cattrall's brother died in real life, SJP wrote something on her Instagram saying, so sorry for your loss. And she wrote back, Kim Cattrall wrote back in public saying, you were cruel to reach out. You were cruel then, you're cruel now. Like really, like, stop publicly reaching out and trying to give everybody a good girl image, and has never deleted that. That's what fascinates me. She's never deleted. It's still there.
I think she is a brilliant actress, Kim Cattrall. I think she there's like talent coming out of her pores, but I think she's crazy. And I'm on Sarah Jessica's side all the way with this.
I think Team SJP.
Oh, 100%. And always, I like to reduce everything down to the celebrities that I met when I was a waitress in New York City in my 20s. And I waited tables on Sarah Jessica Parker and Matthew Broderick on multiple occasions. And they were unbelievably nice, like deeply, viscerally kind people. And I believe this thing that's like, if you want to know someone's truest nature, just watch how they speak to waiters.
That is absolutely true. But a lot of celebrities know waiters think that. So
yes, this is what I want to say, Deborah. I feel that my heart could there'd like be divisions, right? So people who didn't give a shit and they're just rude and you're the help and that's that. People who know how to perform. Oh, I know how to speak to people like I'm a nice and grounded celebrity. Mm-hmm. And then people who truly have a kind heart. I think SJP and Matthew have truly kind hearts.
I absolutely love hearing that. And Chris Noth made a statement going, it's just not what I know of SJP. Like Sarah Jessica's such a warm person. Sadly, Willie Garson, who played Stanford, died in the middle of filming the reboot that I'm calling the reboot. Wittily every time. Right. I'm never going to let it go.
It's very strong. You have to commit to that.
I'm committing to it forever. Yeah. So God, there's going to be this other. Of course, they didn't know he was going to die. He died of pancreatic cancer, and it's so sad. But that's going to be another death for her to deal with, because presumably that's the only way they're going to be able to deal with that. It's not respectful to the actor to say he just left town. So they must have had to rewrite his death. So God, can you imagine losing Big and then losing Stanford if you're Carrie?
Oy, horrific.
Absolutely devastating.
God, I didn't realize he passed away midway. I thought we were going to see Stanford through this whole season.
Well, it says, according to the internet, and that's not always, I don't know if you know the internet, it's not always as reliable as some things.
Sure.
But it says midway. And, he was such a wonderful guy and actor as well. But he stood by SJP as well. So look, hey, we don't know.
We don't know.
No one knows what happens behind closed doors. I am sure there are things we don't know about. However, a lot of people seem to have been on Team SJP. Who knows? I'm delighted to hear she was lovely to you when you were a waiter. I think you should write to her and remind her of that, and also say you need a little part in season 2 if there's a season 2 of And Just Like That, which I'm sure there will be.
Could showcase my extremely mediocre acting skills.
I'm excited. I feel like you should be in it. Honestly, I think that whole thing was about Kim Cattrall.
You think it was a dig?
Yeah.
Okay, whereas
I think it was
my read was,
dig.
We have to address this. So let's, and it feels crazy that we're making Sex in the City with no Samantha. So let's be just sort of as realistic as possible.
I think if they wanted to be affectionate to that character, they would have had
but
her
they
have passed
were
away.
Affectionate. They were, Deb, because then we're jumping ahead a little bit here, but then we see that flower delivery, which was extremely moving in the second episode. From
Okay,
Samantha.
do you know what I think that was? That was a message to Kim Cattrall. If you were to reach out and give us an olive branch, we would want you back. We're open to you. Because the whole thing is about, now listen, I don't know, maybe this is a conspiracy theory, but it was like, I've continued to reach out to her. And Miranda says, well, that's all you can do. I guess she doesn't want to be our friend anymore. I guess we were just an ATM machine to her. I guess we were just a paycheck. Totally about Kim Cattrall. Then episode 2, Samantha sends flowers to the funeral. And although Carrie didn't want flowers, obviously Samantha didn't know that, she allows this beautiful, big display of flowers on the coffin to stay because it's from Samantha. So it's, I still love you. We still love you. We would have you back to star in an episode, which we know would get amazing ratings. If you wanted to come back for season 2 and this does well, you will be welcome. And we will make season 2 all about making friends with Samantha. That is what the message is. It is a secret message. I have cracked the code.
You have convinced me.
I hope
convinced
so.
me.
I hope so.
That's right.
I think, and do you know what else I think? I think if this season 1 is a huge hit, Kim Cattrall might well be like, fuck it. Okay. I need now to ask you about the wokeness of this. What do you think they had to address how different life is now and how different our worldview is now from when Sex and the City was last on, and especially the movies, which really did not in any way, shape or form stay with the times in any way? Or do you think that's not what this show is about? Why are they going there? This is a nostalgia piece. Sure, they've got to deal with things like apps and stuff like that, but we don't need to see Miranda, who was a very certain corporate lawyer, now become a very pulling her forelock and nervous and worried and not able to, form a sentence, and making a Black woman educate her and also make her centering herself in this, this narrative. How did you feel about all of that?
Well, I found it there was something about it that felt a little unrealistic with the Miranda stuff, because I was like, Miranda is this serious lawyer. I almost felt like they were sort of presenting Miranda like my mom, who is, this sort of 60s liberal, but has also lived in an only white town and had only white friends her entire life. And so my mom could potentially say something about someone's hair where you're like, Mom.
We don't do that.
No. But Miranda, I felt it didn't quite feel realistic to the character. So I appreciated the effort, but I thought it was the behavior of a slightly different white woman. So I found it uncomfortable, but better to try and be uncomfortable than to not try. What was your feeling on it?
To me, Miranda knew herself, she knew her own mind, and she was the one of the 4 of them that was most likely to keep up with what was happening in the world and technology and innovation. That's who she was. When she was with her friends, she was a girl's girl. But out there in the real world, she was a senior partner in a law firm. She always had the most up-to-date Palm Pilot or whatever it was back in the day. Children, a Palm Pilot was an early and blah, 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 blah. It was technology in its day. And I don't believe that a sophisticated metropolitan woman who had been through the last decade and a half with corporate responsibility, with how workplace ethics and standards had changed, diversity and inclusion in the workplace. She would have been to so many D&I seminars that I have personally delivered to firms like Miranda's. She would know all this. And she would certainly have learned a lot in the last 5 years. She would not be stumbling around now. What I would have loved to have seen, and again, I'm writing a parallel show, so with love to the writers who've written this show, can I say the show that I want, bespoke for me, please? I want to see Miranda with her own firm. I don't buy that this absolutely ambitious, driven corporate lawyer hears about the Muslim ban and then just gives up her job and goes, I'm going to go into human rights. That's nothing that we've ever seen of her before. If she has changed in that way, great. Then I want to see her in a sophisticated way be there. Do you know what I mean? I want to see her know it, be it, live it, be in it. I don't really want to see her, I'd love to see her with her own boutique firm. And honestly, this is the dream for me. She's got her own firm, or she's now the most senior partner in a law firm. The women she mentors, who are now 35, who are under her, look up to her. She helps them get through stuff that she was going through, but they also educate her a little bit. But she's not scared around them. Maybe sometimes she does say something that's a little 55-year-old white lady, and they're like, put her in a place, and she's like, hey, you snowflake, you just got here. And they're like, well, you need to think about this. And we see her learn over the thing of going, actually, they've got a great point. I don't want to see her abasing herself. It's so and not knowing basic things that everyone knows now.
This
who's
is
a
it.
metropolitan,
And it was like, it wasn't her
woman.
thinking, you know, like an opinion that I can have sometimes that I'm not fully comfortable having. But I think it is that I feel uncomfortable when things from a different era are judged by today's standards, which makes me feel slightly more like a centrist when I think of myself as quite a leftist. Or you say so an opinion like that from Miranda would be okay. But this sort of, why are you checking her idea? When I read my anti-racist manual, I'm like,
God.
That's not Miranda.
It's not Miranda, but B, it's not any. There are two kinds of white women who are in the corporate world as long as Miranda. One of the ones who know how to say the right thing, but secretly behind closed doors go, oh, God, and roll their eyes and don't really get the point.
Right.
And it's gone over. They've missed the point, or they're just going, this doesn't serve me. And I'm quite selfish. I liked the way it was, which is a big problem with white people in general or male people in a changing gender world or whatever. Or they go, oh, I see, I get it. Yeah, okay, I need to make room, I need to make space, I need to not center myself in this situation, I need to not make crass comments about people's hair.
Right.
And I just want to see her be one of those and grow from that place. I just don't recognize this woman who's dropping her books and going, I'm so sorry.
Yes,
I've never seen her apologize.
I wondered as well, like so we know, I mean, it seems quite clear. I mean, what we haven't also spoken about is it's very clear they're sowing the seeds of her alcoholism.
Oh my God, but that's so overt. It's like, I'm going to a bar that's not open yet and saying, I'll wait till you start pouring the wine. And then I've got a wine in my handbag at a child's piano recital.
Right.
Which is fun. That part's funny because everyone's like, oh, I'm on the wine. But then it's like a third time she orders wine before the bar's open. I'm like, come on now.
We get it. And I'd like to see some, there's a certain, God, if anyone has any thoughts on the right way to say this, but you know, and I say this as the wife of someone who is a recovered alcoholic who's been sober 20 years. So I don't think that alcoholism is a laughing matter. I do think that a lot of people of a certain age are not alcoholics exactly, but there is some, as you're sort of searching out little joys and ways to celebrate, there's a relationship to alcohol for people of a certain age that have always had an absolutely fine relationship to alcohol that starts to feel really interesting. And I would like to see that examined in a nuanced way. What I was going to say about the teacher, it's like we know that there's some kind of friendship that is going to burgeon between those two women. And what's in it for the other woman? Like, what is she going to get out about being friends with Miranda?
Well, Miranda stopped her being mugged by someone in a Chucky mask. But that is the full tenet of the friendship at the moment, as far as I can make out.
Yes, I know. But of course, it has to be more. I had this friend who I say a friend who I always disliked. It was a friend's partner for years and years and years. We're together. And I fucking hated this guy. And I got into a very bad car accident and was in the hospital for weeks. And he came to visit me more than anybody else. So I'd always be like, oh, you know, he's sort of an asshole, but he came into the hospital more than anybody else. And then eventually I was like, it's because he had nothing else to do. Like, and that's the thing with the friendship with this guy, with Miranda. It's like, yeah, I get it. She like used a heavy book to clobber this Chucky doll over the head. But really, what are you getting from this lady?
Also, I don't buy that Miranda's not a Kindle person. She, again, in the old show, she was always ahead with the tech. It was Carrie that was like, I can't use a phone.
Yes.
I can't use an iPhone. Miranda, help me use this.
Of course, she was the one who was like setting her up on email and all that
and
stuff.
Like, she's a corporate lawyer. She would have gone over to that stuff so many years ago. It just doesn't, none of this is Miranda's character. I don't understand. She wasn't apologetic. She was ahead of, she was always, I was like, when we were talking about this, before this show came about, I always predicted that Miranda would be the one with her pronouns in her bio. Do you know what I mean? Like, she'd be ahead of that stuff. She'd be like,
yes.
She was, and they are hinting that she is going to, I think the promise is there that she's going to end up in a same-sex relationship, maybe open her relationship, or Steve and she are no longer going to be together or some way, because she's definitely hinting that she's got this amazing chemistry with Miranda's
that stuff
podcast.
Felt good. I thought I know Sara Ramirez is the actress's name. I've forgotten what the character's name is, but I thought that thing felt real and right, that she'd go like ballistic at some woman who was smoking her son up at a funeral, but then they'd find their way back a little bit and kind of realize that maybe like just on a chemistry platonic level, there's something here.
No, because she said to her, like, she says something about queen of something and she goes, no, king. Oh, I'm mama bear. I'm mama bear with my son. I'm sorry, but I'm mama bear. And she goes, papa bear. And there's implications there around poking at the sort of, and in those ways, I absolutely would want the show to come into the 21st century, of course. Like,
this is what's so interesting, is that like it would make sense that the team behind Sex and the City would address LGBTQIA plus issues well, but not handle the race stuff as well.
Why not just give Miranda a black colleague who is allowed to be a sexual woman and a fashionista, like the white women are? Why do the black women have to be?
This is the thing, is that there's probably no one who isn't white writing on or producing that show.
I really hope that's not true, because
I feel like it might be true.
Please, if you are a person of color in that writer's room, having your voice heard, amazing. But we really do hope that there are women of color in the writer's room, because
this is this thing that always feels uncomfortable when it's like you sort of quote unquote fix the problem on camera, which is a great step. But if it's an all white, if it's white people producing and directing and writing about these things, it feels a certain kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Did you identify anything that was like a callback from the old? We've got a little segment here called, hey, that's like a thing from the old series. Did you notice anything that was a callback, a shadow, a replica of a line from the old series? I have a few, if you want me to start you off.
You start me off. I thought I saw a few like fashion callbacks, but
okay.
You go with some of your lines.
Okay, what I think is when Big makes Carrie listen to a different LP every night, that is evoking the Moon River episode.
Oh my God, before he goes.
Yeah, he puts on a record as the only thing left in the apartment, and they dance to Moon River. That is the same episode where her shoes get wet because Miranda's water breaks over her beautiful shoes. What does she say about the shoes when she sees them in the shop window? Do you remember the line?
Hello, lovers.
Right. Hello, lovers is evoked when she looks in her own wardrobe at her shoes. What shoes does she choose to wear to the recital?
Her wedding shoes.
Yes. And what happens to them?
Again, they get wet again when her husband dies. I feel like I'm going to cry.
That is poetry to me. They've woven it through, but not too heavily. But I could see all of those echoes.
Guys, that subtlety, that beauty, just bring that to the conversations on race and Miranda's alcoholism. That's all I'm asking.
That's all we're asking.
That's all I'm asking for.
And
God, I mean, I have to say, every time I saw those kids, like when they first showed us Lily, I just burst into tears. I could cry now thinking about it.
Okay, Raven Smith, who I'm very much hoping is going to guest on this podcast. Do you know Raven Smith?
Raven Simone?
Smith.
No, I don't know
Raven Smith. Everyone who loves Sex and the City, or even loves to be irritated by Sex and the City, at Raven Smith on Instagram. Follow him right now. He has such great insights and he does the funniest posts. And this morning he posted this on Instagram. It's he's actually doing my campus Christmas Guilty Feminist Christmas show. He's so funny. He posted this picture of Lily in the movie putting Carrie's phone in her little pink cupcake bag.
Yes.
And underneath he has put ruining Carrie's life since 2008. Because Lily, and I didn't see this one, Lily was what stood between her and picking up the phone to Big and talking him down so that he would have not stood her up at the altar.
Oh my God,
which was the big breakup in the first movie. And now Lily's recital is the reason she wasn't there to call the ambulance to stop him dying, because they would have been in the Hamptons or whatever. And then he probably would have gone to the hospital.
Fucking Lily.
Yeah. So poor old Lily, she doesn't mean it. But
no, she doesn't mean it. We'll blame Charlotte instead. I saw I can't remember who tweeted it, but there's a very funny tweet this morning where someone was like, Kim Cattrall should do a Peloton ad. I'm like, that's fucking very funny.
Oh my God, that's incredibly funny.
But when they show those faces of those kids all grown up, I just burst into tears. And I remember the scene where Harry comes home and says, I've got something too, and shows Charlotte the picture of her daughter for the first time. I mean, I could cry now thinking about it. That's it. That's our daughter.
It's making me feel very mortal, I'll be honest, seeing them all. Like seeing Chris Noth old.
Yeah.
And then they flash back to the first moment of romance she remembers. I think it's the first time she ever sees him.
Oh, it was very...
When he turns around across a bar.
You know, this is
he's so young and handsome.
So young and handsome. And you think about
he seemed old to me then. He seemed so grown up and sophisticated and like old. Like this, she's dating this like old CEO banker guy.
This is what's so interesting.
He looks so young now.
Right now. I'm 42, and I always think about like, oh my God, remember when I was 25? And you think when Sex and the City started, Chris Noth was, I think, supposed to be sort of like mid 40s, you know? And you're like, you're just...
Oh, he was such a grown-up.
You're just the version of yourself that you'll be remembering when you were 65. And I heard a great interview. You know, there's a really famous interviewer in the States, Terry Gross, and she was interviewing Mel Brooks, who is now 95. And she was like, teach us, what do we still have to learn by the time we're 95? And it makes you think about time and just trying to connect to the idea that you're the youthful one now that the 20 plus year version of yourself will remember in another 20 years.
That's exactly it. We have to look to the forward to when we're in our 90s and going, my God, we were so young, we were so relevant, we were so in the game, we were out there.
My neck still looked good, you know?
100% I try and do that. Do you know what I sometimes do, as this is a little exercise that I do? If I'm about to do a show and I'm a little anxious about the show because, I don't know, there's producers in, or I don't know, if there's some thing that I think I'm not enjoying this because I'm anxious, some moment in my life, what I do is I close my eyes and I'm imagining that I'm very elderly and maybe I'm in an elderly person's home or in something, you know, I'm literally in a bath chair in the sun and I have to be like wheeled in. And then I imagine I'm about to die.
I love this.
I am given one day to flash back to where I get to be young and vibrant and in my element and on stage in the spotlight with an audience and having this amazing rapport with the audience and rapport with the other people I'm on stage with or whatever. And I get to live that hour, that show, that afternoon, that party, that day, that moment. I then open my eyes and I'm like, this is it. This is the one moment you get to live as a vibrant young person again. And then after this, you're back in the bath chair and you're going to die. And then I walk out onto the stage and I'm like, you're here. This is your turn. You're having your turn. And I look back, I read a lot about the Bloomsbury set, Tallulah Bankhead. I've been running a show about Tallulah Bankhead and stuff. And I go, they could never imagine it wasn't going to be their turn. They were the toast of the West End. They were London. They could never imagine a time when it wouldn't be their turn. You're having your turn now. Live it.
That is inspiring and meditative and beautiful.
I want to do it more because I think it's really important to do it. Quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Before we go. One is, were there any lines? You were so great at the Succession lines. Were there any lines that stood out to you as zingers?
Well, yeah, I want to stand up in strong defense of a line that I've seen a little bit of criticism of that I thought was beautiful, which was how we close out episode 1, where she says, and just like that, Big died. And I read a few things online that were like, really? And I thought, yeah, really.
It's got to be simple like that. Yeah, I agree.
It has to be that simple. And we very rarely hear her call him John. And it was, you know, I thought she did this incredible performance of, I thought it was a beautiful death scene. And I thought, yeah, and just like that, Big died was gorgeous.
I agree. I also found this is when she's watching a video of the funeral home sizzle reel made me laugh out loud. What are you watching? A funeral home sizzle reel? And I love, thank God, can I say, for Stanford and Anthony, because they kept up the bitchiness. Like Stanford says at the funeral when she comes in wearing this incredible like Dior New Look evoking outfit, Stanford says, bless her, she knew she had to deliver a look today. Like everyone would be expecting it and she delivered a look. And like stuff like that Stanford and Anthony to me were the heart of the old Sex and the City, and they like dared to let them be that. And I could do with, if anybody's listening for season 2, more. This show is about sex. It's about fashion. It's about brunch. It's about having a good time. And I really think, yes, of course, I don't want to see them say racist, homophobic, transphobic things like they did back in the day, that now are clang, clang, clang goes the trolley. But I want them to be in the real world. I want them to be respectful of other people's identities and humanity. But I also want the show to be about fashion and sex and shoes and
and maybe
booze.
that's maybe what they decided was that killing big was going, if we could have that moment, get through the grief, fast forward a year, and we're there.
Can I also just very quickly ask you what your predictions are?
Okay. Prediction. I mean, I'm straight up stealing one of these from a thing you said, because when you said it, I went, yep. I think there's going to be a big time lapse so that we can get out of grief. There's clearly going to be a romance between Carrie and the producer of the pod. Did you notice that there kept being a couple of cuts to so Carrie was on the podcast with Sara Ramirez and is it Bobby Lee? But then they kept showing on the other side of the glass this really handsome guy who was seemingly the producer.
I did not notice that.
She's going to be fucking that dude, and I will really enjoy watching it. I think there's going to be a big old thing that happens sexually with because I think the hearing stuff with Steve feels sort of weird and extreme, and I think it's about making him seem old and passé. And what I think is interesting is in marriages where one person cheats and then it's this huge to-do. A few years later, the other person does it. So I think we're ready for Miranda to cheat. And I think she might do it with Sara Ramirez. And I'm excited.
Interesting.
What about yours?
I wondered about that situation with Steve and whether the actor had lost some hearing or whether they were, trying to be representative with disability, which, is often something that gets left out. But I also felt like, is this their whole thing was their witty repartee? Is it slowing that down? Is it sort of sucking what was in the relationship out of the relationship? How does somebody handle that? Like if I lost my hearing or Tom lost his hearing, I imagine, it would be very challenging because there's a lot of back and forth. But at the same time, I think we would find a way around it. And we would, I have friends who've lost hearing who absolutely have their witty repartee with their partners. So I don't know what that's about yet. And I'm going to put a pin in that because I, of course, do want to see disability represented on screen in positive ways. I wonder if just in general, as you say, that there's going to be some kind of cheating there going on. I don't know. But what I would say is I really do hope they do jump in time so we don't have a whole season of mourning and not being able to move forward. Sarah, do you have anything to plug apart from your incredible podcast?
So a couple quick plugs. I am doing a live show of my own Succession podcast this Sunday, the 12th of December at 21 Soho in London at 4 p.m. We have Rebecca Taylor, a.k.a. Self-Esteem. It's going to be an incredible show. And then I am doing a much more lo-fi but still equally spectacular and fun new material night at 2 North Down on Tuesday the 14th. Or come see me at the Bill Murray on the 18th of January where I'll be working up a whole new show. Not yet titled, but just doing some stuff.
Amazing. And please, everyone, listen to the Succession podcast. If you love Succession, listen to 5 Question 4. If you don't yet watch Succession, watch it with that companion piece. On the 12th, I'm hoping to come to your show at 4, between 4 and 5, because then I've got to rush over to the Globe where we've got our Women in Power show. So if anyone wants to come to that Succession show and jump in a cab with me over to the Globe, that's a way.
And I'll
we
tell
could
you
do
right
both.
now, we're putting Rebecca Taylor, aka Self-Esteem, in the first half of the show.
Smart.
She's got somewhere to be as well. So
Smart.
the 4 to 4:45 time slot will be the packed one anyway.
Okay, great. Self-Esteem is also going to be at Camp as Christmas. She's doing a 20-minute acoustic set.
Oh my
At Camp
God.
as Christmas, which is going to be incredible. It's on the 16th. It's at the Union Chapel. Everyone on the bill is LGBTQ+. And it's got the Queen herself, Sandy Toksvig. Where else are you going to see Sandy Toksvig and Self-Esteem on the same bill? It's got Raven Smith, Russell Tovey, Travis Alabanza, amazing drag act called Doja Cat, Jessica Foster-Q, Susie Ruffles just been announced. Tom Allen and I are hosting. Jen Brister. It's
What a
really going to be
night. That's going to be
an
a night.
extravaganza.
That is an extravaganza.
Of holiday queerness. So come and make your Yuletide gay. All proceeds go to Say It Loud, run for and by LGBTQ refugees running from homophobic oppression, and also Can Do, which is alarming Syrian schools against airstrikes. Please, please, please come. And it's all going to be very COVID safe, masks and, vaccination cards at the door. So don't fear coming. I am so excited to see what else happens in this show. And I hope at some point you come back. And as we go down the line, we are talking more and more about episodes where we're like, that was the greatest moment in the history of Sex and the City.
Yes, here's hoping.
There were enough good moments that I feel hopeful. I just hope.
I thought it was, I did not think it was a car crash. And I thought parts of it were legit good. And I think that's a great starting point.
I think if they pass in time and Miranda catches up to herself and knows where she is and who she is,
maybe we're in business. Maybe then we can rock and roll.
And Carrie can just get hit the ground running with the dating and sex in the third decade of the 21st century. I think it's going to be really interesting.
All right. Fingers crossed.
Thank you so much. Also, Charlotte's going to deal with a non-binary child, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, totally.
And that
kid's last name was Swinton, and I was wondering if it's Tilda Swinton's daughter.
I don't know if she's just a sort of androgynous. She has androgynous gender expression yet, or they are.
Or we're going to go
non-binary.
somewhere with that. Yeah.
But I love that for Charlotte because she's going to have to cope with the fact that she is such a girly girl, and how does she parent somebody who has their own gender expression? Fascinating. Sara Barron, it's been completely wonderful to hang with you.
It was great to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
You have been listening to The Guilty Feminist Watches and Just Like That with Deborah Francis-White and special guest Sara Barron. The producer for The Spontaneity Shop was Tom Selinsky. The Guilty Feminist is part of the Acast Creator Network. And Just Like That is on HBO Max in the United States and Sky Comedy in the UK. Join us next time